Welcome to the More Than Fitness podcast.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Minisode number 121. Is this the third time I've recorded this intro? Yes, it is. Had technical difficulties, screwed up, just the way it goes. Nonetheless, I've got a great minisode for you guys today. We're going to talk about getting over your fear of gaining weight. Now, I typically think that there's two camps of people where this fear really gets to them. And I think that the first camp is going to be people who have lost a bunch of weight, right? Maybe they've already gone through a decent amount of time dieting. Maybe they were really heavy to begin with and then lost a bunch of weight. And now maybe they want to switch up their goals. And of course, it doesn't have to be somebody who's been really heavy. Maybe you just went through a fat loss phase where you worked really hard and now you maybe want to switch gears a little bit and you want to focus more on strength or muscle gain, or maybe reverse dieting and trying to bring up your natural set point and your maintenance calories and all these different things. But this camp of people is just so afraid of basically undoing all the hard work that they just put forth, right, to reach this goal that maybe has been so elusive to them for quite some time. And then the other camp of people that tend to have this fear of gaining weight and gaining fat is more so the hard gainers, the kind of like naturally skinny, quote unquote, people who have maybe had trouble gaining weight in the past, and maybe they don't want to be that way anymore. Maybe they want to bulk up a little bit. They want to add a little bit of lean size, be a little bit more muscular. And the thing is while they want to be more muscular and gain weight and be bigger, since they've always been this naturally leaner person, they've built a little bit of their identity around it. Sometimes, of course, this is a generalization, but often people can say, they might have had peers and friends say, oh, you've always been small, like, oh, you're so skinny, yet you can eat whatever you want. And people make these comments and things. And while they can still want to be bigger, have bigger muscles and things like that, anytime they tend to go on a bulk and try to gain weight, and as soon as they start to have a little bit of extra fat and their lines in their bodies or in their abs get a little bit blurrier, well, then they freak out and then they end up cutting again right away, right? So both of these camps tend to, be really motivated in the beginning. I'm gonna gain some weight. I'm gonna gain some healthy weight, right? I'm gonna gain some muscle, and then 2 weeks goes by. Maybe they overdid it, they overshot, and they wake up one day, they don't like how they look, they freak out, and so they start cutting again. And this can be a vicious cycle of gaining and losing that is typically referred to as just spinning their wheels, right? So maybe this is where you are. And even if you don't fall into one of those specific camps, I think if you just have a general fear of your weight going up in general, I think that this minisode will help you. So the first thing that I would say is to get over this fear is to put your subjectivity aside, put your emotions aside, and use objective data. This is going to be the biggest thing that I think. If you're going to listen to anything in this minisode, I think this is the biggest one, because this is what I've seen firsthand with the clients that I've worked with who have been working through this problem, has really helped them, because I can say, okay, here's the hard data, right? The data doesn't lie. And as long as I explain and interpret that data to them and be like, hey, look, we did this, then this happened, and then this will probably happen next. And whenever that thing that I predicted that's going to happen next actually happens, well, then they start to trust the process a little bit more, right? And the things that I would say to track would be simple things like your daily calorie intake. That's going to be a pretty simple one. I think your weight is going to be another obvious one. Your daily weight, waist measurements, pictures. So waist measurements every 2 weeks. pictures every like 4 weeks or so. And then another very important one is going to be your gym performance. So how are you getting stronger in the gym on your main lifts over time? As long as your weight is going up and your waist measurements aren't, drastically increasing as well. And you can even just have a belt, right? If you have a belt and you have it on a certain hole, and then it doesn't get way tighter as the scale tends to go up, well, then it's probably a good sign that you're adding on some lean muscle mass. But having these objective indicators, monitoring them over time, is going to be kind of like your safety net to fall back to whenever you tend to get in your head, and hopefully it encourages you to stick to the plan, because I think that's one of the hardest things that people that happens with this, is because there comes a sticking point almost where people have tried to gain weight in the past, and then they start to gain a little bit of weight, or maybe their abs begin to blur a little bit, they see the scale go up, and then they freak out, and then they decide to cut again. But if you can get through that sticking point and rely on this data and just trust the process, I think that you'll be very happy with how things end up. And yeah, this brings me to my next one, which is kind of a subcategory of that, and that's understanding weight fluctuations and why the scale is doing what it does. And it should be comforting to know that it actually takes quite a bit of overeating over a prolonged period of time to add any substantial amount of fat. And so if you understand that, sure, maybe whenever you initially increase your calories or something, you might see a slight spike in weight, but that's typically going to become it's going to come from glycogen in your muscles, because maybe you're eating more carbohydrates, so you're going to have more glycogen in your muscles, which is a good thing. Your body is going to store more water within that glycogen and in your muscles and throughout your entire body, which is also a good thing. But seeing that spike can initially scare people. But after that initial spike, if there even is one, right? For most people, there probably will. If you can stick through that, I think that you will be very happy with how you end up looking for 8, 12 weeks down the line, whenever your muscles are fuller, they're rounder. Maybe your skin is actually a little bit tighter because you are constantly filled with glycogen. You get great pumps in the gym. You're very strong. But to get back to the point, understanding these weight fluctuations and realize that if you consistently monitor the things that I just talked about, your fear of gaining tons of fat drastically overnight or within even several weeks, that is basically non-existent. And since you're watching this in the first place, you probably are a little bit anal about your weight to begin with, right? You're monitoring these things pretty closely. And so if that's the case, if you say, hey, okay, I'm going to really stick this out for the next 4 weeks at least, right? And then you do what you say you're going to do, and then you realize maybe the scale doesn't go up as much as you thought, or let's say you do end up gaining a bunch of weight. Well, all that is just a feedback mechanism to say, hey, cut back a little bit. That's all you have to do. As far as a rate of weight gain, I think gaining about 0.5 to 1.5 pounds per week is going to be a really good rate for most people to add mostly quality muscle and very little, if any, body fat. And like I said, if you're monitoring these things, the likelihood that you're just going to wake up one day and be like, oh my God, I'm huge, is impossible, right? So understand why the weight is doing what it's doing, and realize that it is going to fluctuate along the process, and don't let that discourage you. Stick with the plan, check the boxes, and you'll be happy with what happens next. And that brings me to my next point, which is fat loss is relatively easy and simple compared to muscle gain. Think about how much fat you can lose within an 8-week period or a 12-week period. You can lose quite a bit of fat, and you can actually see noticeable changes in your physique, in your body. But compare that to muscle gain, the likelihood that you're going to lift hard for 8 weeks and see any real noticeable muscle gains in your body is for most people, it's very rare. And my point here is that let's say you gain 10 pounds over the next 6 months or something like that, right? Or 4 months, right? And 5 of those pounds are from muscle, and then 5 of those pounds are from fat. Well, it's like the fat loss part of that, you've already done the hard part of that, which is you gained the muscle in the first place, right? You stuck it out for 4 to 6 months. You gained this muscle mass, and sure, maybe you gained a little bit of fat along the process too. But now, like I said, fat loss is relatively straightforward. And now all you have to do is do a mini cut and you can shed down those 5 pounds. But now you have an extra 5 pounds of muscle. And so whenever you do that cut, you reveal your new physique, right? This more muscular, maybe your muscle bellies have better shape to them, right? They're bigger, you're leaner overall. And that can be a really good feeling. But if you never give yourself that chance in the first place, to gain a little bit of that excess fat, well, then you also don't give your chance to gain that extra muscle as well. So it's sometimes the price you have to pay for that short-term period so that you can reap the benefits long-term, right? And that's the biggest thing here is keep the long term in mind, because the short term fluctuations and you being in your own head is going to happen, right, throughout this process if you're serious about it. But if you can stick it through and you can really focus on monitoring things, keeping your mindset in check, not getting too sloppy, and 6 months down the road, you've gained some quality weight, and sure, maybe you've gained a little bit of fat, but then you do a little bit of a mini cut, and then you realize, oh shit, I look so much better. I'm stronger, right? I have a more muscular body than I did before, and that feeling, that fulfilling satisfaction you get from that, I can promise you, it's going to be huge. It's going to be a big moment for you. And lastly, the last thing is to trust yourself, and trusting yourself comes from getting through that sticking point that I mentioned earlier and doing things a little bit out of your comfort zone that you haven't done before, and then realizing you're okay. Right? Nothing bad happened. The end of the world didn't happen just because you gained a little bit of excess body fat. It's like, I can understand how psychologically hard it can be to see that scale go up after you have tried so hard to see that scale go down. But monitor the right things, train hard in the gym, and I promise you it'll make you feel better about yourself after you follow through with it. But trust yourself that you will handle whatever situation happens, and that you're going to have the tools to get through it and to adapt and to see it through. So that is my tips for getting over your fear of gaining weight. And at the end of the day, just remember, it is just weight, right? It's not who you are as a person. It doesn't say that you're not disciplined, or that you're not hardworking, or that you're not worthy, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, keep perspective as well. And that is it for Minisode number 121, getting over your fear of gaining weight. Hope that was helpful. And thank you guys, as always, for listening and for watching. See ya.